The spectrum of cars out there is the size of the world itself, and the only way to see them is to actually go there. And so when an opportunity to film car culture in New Zealand came up, thanks to Andy, Kaz, and Rob, the creators of Automation, we took them up on it and brought back these films. Automation is the first car company tycoon game where you can design your own cars and engines in crazy technical detail, test them, and create your own version of the perfect car company. And rather than buying banner ads, they called on us to help sell it. Without them, we wouldn't have these videos, so check out their game at automationgame.com. As an American car enthusiast, to me, New Zealand is a fantasy land. From the perfect roads winding through impossibly beautiful vistas to the rare, cheap JDM cars, it's like nothing I've ever seen. But New Zealand's best asset is not the cars or the landscape, it's her people. Meet Alex and Hannah, the perfect New Zealand couple. This is their workshop, which they built by hand. This is their home, which they built by hand. And this is their daily driver, which, yes, you guessed it, built by hand to near perfection.
You know, once you kind of reach that upper limit of performance, there's only so many places to go. And once you get there, believe it or not, you can get bored. So then it becomes about the story. And I have not met many people that are more interesting than Alex and cars that are more interesting than this.
New Zealand is about taking old cars and mucking around with them, modifying them, dropping bigger engines in, getting more speed, doing it on the cheap, I think is the main Kiwi thing. You know, we don't spend tons of money like a lot of other places do. We like to do everything in the backyard and do it as much as we can ourselves. The original engine was a 1200cc. It was buggered. On the first drive, which was about a 200-mile drive, it used 4 litres of oil. I put a Ford Crossflow engine out of a little Escort. That went in, a little 1600 with about sort of 90 horsepower. And that was fun, but it didn't really float my boat. I'd had lots and lots of Mazda rotaries. I'd had several RX-7s and I loved the rotaries. So I had a cheap rotary motor, which I'd brought back from England with me, and I slung that inside. That was a carb-fed turbo, so it was a 12A with a little Garrett turbo drawing through an SU carburetor. It looked almost factory and it was fantastic fun, but I just couldn't quite get it to run quite right with the carb. I was constantly mucking around trying to get it to run a bit smoother, and I just got bored and I wanted to do another engine swap. Eventually I found these little Mazda V6s, and the more I looked at them, the more I liked the idea of it. You know, they're a super lightweight all-alloy engine. They've got a split crankcase design where the forged crank, which is stock standard, gets cradled up by the lower half of the crankcase. So it's super strong and rigid. They're really compact. They're one of the most compact V6s, quad cam V6s that you can get. The weight-wise, when I swapped it in, it was actually about the same weight as the rotary. So I got a V6 2.5 litre without any increase in weight. The red line on this engine is set at 7.5, but they're happy up to 8 grand.
The engine is so smooth. There's like no vibration from it that comes into the cabin. I'm not the biggest V6 fan, but how do you argue with a 2.5 liter V6 that fits in this tiny little car and revs to almost 8,000 RPM? Whoop, little understeer. Loves the rev. I can just hang it out at 5,000 RPM. I love the feel of it. It's got a real vintage Trans Am feel to it. And how about this road? Good Lord.
In order to fit into the Viva, I had to change the inlet manifold because the original inlet manifold is a horrible, ugly design, really complex with variable length runners. I took that off I cut one of the original inlet manifolds down and then fabricated my own inlet manifold to suit a rear-wheel drive application. So I made my own headers to suit. There's tons of room in a Viva engine bay because of the double wishbone suspension. They've got this big, wide engine bay that can accommodate anything. So then I had to make my own ECU. I knew nothing but the very basics about fuel injection. So we bought a book, read up on that, read on the internet, and then ordered a kit from DIY Auto Tune, and that got shipped out to New Zealand for 500 bucks. We had an ECU, we assembled it over a few nights during the week, pieced it together and slung that in, and I'll have to show you that later, you'll like where it is. And so Hannah actually helped me build the ECU. If Hannah wasn't there, I would have screwed things up because she spotted things that I missed. She's very patient. I can be impatient. But she just spotted things I would have missed. And then when it came to tuning it, I had to have someone in the passenger seat with a laptop. So she learned that really quick and was invaluable. And now she knows pretty much everything I know about tuning ECUs.
We really like the idea of building the Megasquirt computer ourselves. And there's that fun element as well that it's it comes in a little kit with lots of bits and in tiny bags and all labelled, and you get to read some instructions and fit it all together. And it's not rocket science, it's just soldering some things to a board and making sure you put all the right components in for your engine. And that was actually really fun. We're not just striving for power, we're also striving for good economy, because this is our daily car, and petrol's not cheap. There is a plan in the future that we might turbocharge it, but we know that will make it a bit more thirsty, but it'll also make it faster and a bit more fun.
This steering wheel, just a steering wheel, right? Not just a steering wheel. This steering wheel was built by hand by Alex's uncle and used on a Morris Minor for all their family road trips for years. And when Alex's uncle died, he sent him the steering wheel to put in this car. And so there's a connection there. Not only is it a connection to the family, but the family member made the wheel. There's like no squeaks and rattles at all in this car. Everything is just absolutely tight as a drum. Pushes a little under braking, but really, really, really nicely sorted. These slaloms here. Look at this road.
It's got Holden Tirana coil springs all round, which are slightly lower, a little bit stiffer. It's got Spax adjustable shock absorbers from the UK, so I can just climb under the car and wind them up stiffer or lighter. It's got bigger disc brakes on the front from a Vauxhall Ventura, which is a 3.3 litre, so larger discs, but they're not ventilated, so on really, really hard, long downhills you can start to get in a bit of fade. The rear axle is a 1.8 Vauxhall Viva rear axle, which is good for around about 200 horsepower. So at some point I'm expecting it might die, but I've taken the original steel wheels and had them widened. I couldn't do that myself. In New Zealand, you have to get a certified engineer to do that as part of the certification process in order to get your modified car made legal. With that, it's meant I've been able to fit wider 185 section tyres and still keep it looking pretty standard.
Usually these cars do not inspire much confidence, but this one, no problem just kind of getting in it and hustling. Right down over. Look at that, it leans down. That is good fun. I like this car. This thing is great. The dash is really clean. The gauges are really clean. I can't tell you how many cool cars are ruined by ugly gauges. And he made these.
I decided to make my own instrument cluster. I used some Toyota Celica Speedo head, with the electronic sender, which happens to screw into the Mazda gearbox perfectly. And then I use the rev counter from a Mazda Unos, just the inside of the rev counter govern, all the bits and pieces. Machined up my own sort of housings for all the instruments. Fitted the wideband into one of the housings, fitted the fuel temp gauges, and basically made my own instrument cluster.
It's amazing though, this little V6 engine, which if it was in a modern car, nobody would think twice about it, but the way he's got it laid out in there, when you open the hood, you go, wow, what is that? But it's weird. Usually people have old cars and they put these cami race motors in them with lumpy idles or big turbos, and they feel like race cars. This has the engine from just a sedan. It's a very advanced engine. It's a really strong engine, but ultimately it's just a sedan engine from the mid-90s. So when you add that type of power delivery, that type of smoothness to an old car, you're not just improving the performance of it, you are also improving the refinement, the drivability, the fuel economy. So many things about this car are improved by adding a V6 from a mid-90s Mazda. Who'da thunk it?
My dream is to take this workshop and to be able to earn a fair and decent wage playing with cars, modifying cars for other people, fixing old cars and getting them back on the road. I want to do it at a rate which other people can actually afford, because I think gone are the days, it seems, where people can take an old car and cheaply get it back on the road, and to me that's just wrong. So I want to, if I can continue living here and have a bit of coin on the side to be able to tinker with my own cars, I'll be happy, because I just love modifying shit.